losing weight doesn't make you healthier. Losing the right weight makes you healthier. 40% of your weight being lost is from muscle mass, and we're seeing scurvy back on the menu. The fitness industry has decided to become the proxy gatekeeper for prescriptions, and it's forgetting its place. They will run like wildfire through our collective audience. We've got the greatest single opportunity in both of our lifetimes. I think it's a total scandal that you get prescribed it without being given a gym membership thrown in.
Thanks for doing this, Ollie.
It's a genuine delight. This is something that I don't need to be asked twice to do. Any time with you is a joy.
And I think you should thank me for getting you those extra steps for giving you the wrong address.
So I did go to the wrong address.
And I gave you the wrong address.
This isn't about blame. It's about collaboration. I think the reality there is, thank God it was the right part of London, because you know when you're at the wrong location, and you're waiting for that. Where are you? And you sent me a link that was 16-minute walk. So I'm enormously grateful.
Oh fuck. I think this is the second time you've been on the podcast, but obviously it has progressed the way I have learned over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In terms of what it takes to run a good podcast, how do you create good content, how do you get the good guests. I think it's been a learning curve for me.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming again, and thank you. I mean, in the first place, I think when I started this, I had very limited resources in terms of which I put behind this, but now I've got a good team which works on it. But thank you for doing this the first time and the second time as well. So really appreciate it.
Well, I've got to say, I thought the first time was pretty good. Although you have gone up a level. The team's been amazing.
Yeah.
The setting here is amazing.
Yeah.
But the content's always been good. I think it's just giving it some of these touches. Give it the chance of reaching more people, which is why I love to come back on and see if we can spread your messages, and I'll just help you with that.
Amazing, thanks, Ollie. So, Ollie, I remember we spoke at Elevate on the same panel, and I said, I'm going to get you in the hot seat because there's something very rarely do we disagree about something.
Yeah.
And this was one thing I maybe because I don't understand it well enough.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people like me who feel that. This is something that could be concerning. It could be something that could, for the industry, could be something that people would view us as trying to put in a shortcut. Yep. Or not creating a ecosystem which can handle what we're offering people.
Yes.
So the thing we're talking about is Ozempic.
It's the topic du jour. And do you know what was good about Elevate? You and I started to have a good debate, and it was just kicking off. And then we got the host basically cut in and said, enough, you two. And I think the audience were sort of chomping at the bit to hear, because we're both, and I think both of us, we're not polarized in our opinion, but we were really reflecting on the two different perspectives of this GLP-1 or medicated weight loss horizon. And it was just getting juicy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then the axe fell on us. So to have a chance to sort of dive into it is really worthwhile. It's a big topic. I think we have to start by going, our opinion on it is superfluous because it is happening. So I think the fitness industry's sort of decision of whether it anoints it or not is irrelevant because, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, they don't care about our feelings, about our commercial modeling. They will run like wildfire through our collective audience unless we come to find a way to collaborate, understand and assimilate, would be my take. And I'm open to all challenge on this. I think when we go to where the fitness industry was naturally hesitant was in the sense, first and foremost, it's a direct competitor if we're selling weight loss.
Yeah.
Right. So if I go to a gym and its predominant audience are people wanting to lose weight,
yeah.
Then along comes Wegovy. So Ozempic was, from a language point of view, is still broadly used for diabetes management.
Yes.
Whereas Wegovy was by the Norse Novice. It's their semaglutide specifically for weight loss. So more people are on Wegovy than there are on Ozempic because of the weight loss position. And then Mounjaro is slightly different to that, and we can touch on those in a bit if that's interesting. And if it's not, you will certainly turn me away from it. But the principle, these drugs are much more effective at weight loss than exercise. And that's really difficult to position because we all believe that exercise is much more than weight loss, and we need to frame that. But if I look at it pure cold heart and say there is 1,000 people in my catchment area who've got a body mass index between 27.5 and 40 that are my potential personal training audience or my fitness audience, I'm going to have less of those if if these drugs are rolled out and more democratized than they are currently. So the first position of fitness was, well, it's going to cannibalize my market audience. That's absolutely true. Then there was the sort of more philosophical piece, which is where we were talking, which is this a shortcut? Right? Is it a shortcut? And is this instead of behavior? We have at the heart of the fitness industry people who are interested in sustainable behavior change and recognize that has a collective benefit above and beyond what it does on the scales. But is this a shortcut? And I think that's a challenging question that needs some nuance to it. The reality of it is we have to go back to understanding that obesity is a disease. And I think actually the fitness sector is pretty poor at its appreciation of that. And why I would say that, Samir, is because a lot of the people in the fitness industry didn't suffer from obesity. They were quite, and there'll be those listening going, hang on a minute, my gym's made up of people who've reformed, managed their weight. Great. But your majority of your UK workforce are probably people who quite enjoyed physical activity, were quite good at sport, and have converted their passion into a career. There'll be some of those who came through their own journey into effective weight management and body composition, but the majority haven't suffered from obesity. And therefore they view it as a disease of laziness.
Yeah, and so, Ollie, I'll just, stop you here and ask you one, to clarify one thing.
Yeah.
Now, when we say obesity, you are
Yes.
talking clearly clinical obesity. You're not me feeling I'm fat.
Yes.
Right? So
Good question.
I think people confuse, especially in our industry, we
Yeah.
confuse anybody who looks overweight
Yes.
with somebody and mark them as obese and say, okay, that guy is obese.
Yes.
It's not true. So if you could clarify what is so that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
What is being obese?
That's a great question. So we have to follow the traditional medical guideline, which is the body mass index, which most of the fitness doesn't like as a marker, but still has validity, which is basically your kilograms per meter squared. So to get your body mass index, it is a simple algorithm between your height and your weight. So we take your weight in kilograms, let's imagine it's 85. And then we would take your height in meters, let's imagine it's 1.85, so you're 1 meter 85. So you take 1.85, you square it, so you times it by itself. And then you divide your weight in kilograms by that number. And that will give you how many kilograms you have per meter squared. And that's the global chart of determining whether that weight that you possess is in excess for your height. Now that scale, again, traditionally we have ideal weight between 18.5 and 25. Below that is classified as underweight with a range of challenges. The interesting area that we're probably both touching on is this area between 25 and 30,
Yes.
which again moves through incremental slight overweight. And then we have the medical definition of obesity, which is traditionally used in the literature, which is a body mass index above 30. And then we have gradings of that. We have clinical obesity, then we have morbid obesity in terms of when, I think a body mass index, and I'd need to check that, over 40 is classed as morbid obesity because fundamentally we will see comorbidities, i.e. cholesterol, blood pressure, other factors that challenge your likelihood of remaining well. So here is a great distinguishment. With these drugs, are we talking about slightly overweight Ollie? Let me not use myself as an example because people will be worried. My BMI is slightly overweight, so that's always a great contentious point. So we're going to come to why BMI is a bad marker in a minute. But it's a bad marker from an individual point of view.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant marker from a population point of view.
Correct.
So we're just got to be really careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everyone's like, BMI is useless. There aren't that many people hawking around, 80 kilograms of lean tissue. It's just not that common.
Yeah.
So before we get to body composition and body fat, we need to start with most people BMI works pretty well. So the question is, what about if I'm slightly overweight? Am I into this category? And I'm pretty relaxed, Samir. I from my point of view, there's two parts. The fitness industry has decided to become the proxy gatekeeper for prescriptions, i.e. it thinks it's got a role in deciding who goes on these drugs or not. And it's forgetting its place. That is not our job.
Yeah, but we definitely feel so. I mean, a lot of people feel that, we are actually in the right place to call ourselves preventive healthcare.
Agreed.
And that's been taken to the next level by saying, I should be telling who should be taking these drugs.
There's two parts to that. I think we should have this broader role. You and I both agree that the fitness industry could become the wellbeing industry and is in certain steps stepping into that place carefully and intelligently. I think the great danger is we start from a position where we don't have authority or we don't have the intellectual capability, which is to decide on that person with a body mass index of 27.5, So they're slightly overweight. They've had a lifelong difficulty with their weight, be that partly genetically influenced, partly socioeconomically influenced. They're in a lower socioeconomic banding and choices are more difficult for them, partly through their cultural environment, their friends, their family, their social groups. Obesity is this multifactorial disease that has all these components. So we've got this individual and they're trying to work out, do I go on the Wegovy or do I not go on the Wegovy? That is a decision that should be taken by a pharmacist and ideally by the physician in advance of that, i.e. what is the cause of the challenge and what is the solution? What the drug will do is it will enable them to manage their calories in effectively. That is what the drug does. It does three things fundamentally, so that the drug, whether it's semaglutide or tirzepatide, so the two main ones being talked about, semaglutide is the active ingredient in Wegovy, and then tirzepatide is the active ingredient in Mounjaro, with the combination that tirzepatide is a GLP-1 and a GIP, so it's a combination of two different drugs, and that's why it's got slightly more effective numbers. It's doing something like 25% of total body weight in the first year, whereas your semaglutides like Wegovy are 20%. But it's it's a lot of weight. Right? It's a lot of weight. What they're doing is three crucial things, but it's worth just diving on the drug because people probably don't know this. So the drugs are under a class of things called incretins, which are naturally released hormones through our digestive system. And their job is to do a couple of things. First and foremost, it will regulate how fast food moves through my digestive system. So it will slow or speed up gastric emptying. That will determine how full I feel. The second thing, which was the real reason they broke into the mainstream, is they will improve the sensitivity of my cells to insulin.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get to.
Okay, and I don't want to. If you want to get there later, I don't want to spoil it. But because these were an offshoot of a type 2 diabetes medication, which as a condition is its challenge is my body has stopped listening to the insulin I'm producing. So this incredible hormone that stops the glucose rising in my bloodstream, insulin. I've gradually, for whatever reason, desensitized to that. So I'm making more and more insulin and my body's unable to stop glucose levels in my sugar rising and rising.
And people don't know about this. So, so this is a statistic from India. 50% of the people who are pre-diabetic have no clue.
That's amazing, isn't it?
They have fucking no idea.
That's amazing.
And what that means is they just don't know when they will tip over.
Yep.
Like I can give you an example, my personal example, Ollie. My mom got diagnosed with diabetes as an accident. So basically she fell ill.
Yeah.
She went to the doctors.
Yeah.
And my mom's sister, elder sister, is a doctor.
Yeah.
And she was in the US at that point of time, but my mom was in a remote area in India and she went in there and they said, you give her a drip, whatever, glucose or whatever.
Yeah.
And my mom's sister said, can you check her for diabetes? Mom said, no, fucking, I don't have any diabetes.
Yeah.
And she checked, sugar was fucking 300.
Okay.
So that's where she got to know she's got diabetes.
Yes.
So people don't even realize their entire life that they've got diabetes and the role it plays in your weight management or lack of it.
Entirely true. And it's the question there is sort of chicken and egg. Is it the resistance to insulin that's causing the obesity, or is it the obesity causing the lack of sensitivity? I think for people to understand this who haven't got our technical background, we need to run blood glucose in our bloodstream. So before we understand diabetes, we have to understand blood glucose. So you and I will have a certain amount of glucose traveling in our bloodstream. Your mother there is using the milligrams per deciliter values. In the UK, we use millimoles per liter. So people are thinking 300 is crazy. It's a different scale.
Yeah,
it's a different scale. Yeah, different versions. So principally, we are looking for this glucose in our bloodstream to be not too low, not too high. Because too low, my brain, for one, cannot function. Yeah. So if my glucose goes too low, I will go into a coma and die. If my glucose goes too high, unfortunately, glucose, which again, we can interchange the phrase blood sugar, blood glucose, we're talking about the same thing. If my blood glucose goes too high, then it starts to cover healthy cells in glucose, so it encapsulates them. And that cell is then a bit like an M&M. It's encrusted in glucose. It's starved of all the nutrients it needs to survive and it will die. And the cells that get most affected by that are those cells in rich capillary areas. So fingertips, back of the eyes, back of toes.
Correct.
And that process of damaging those tissues by this process of glycosylation is one of the many facets of damage that high glucose unregulated does. So to stop that toxicity from high glucose, my body has this brilliant hormone insulin that if that sugar is going up too high, it produces insulin and I take the sugar out of my bloodstream where it could cause harm and I pack it into my muscles and I pack it into my liver. And we store it as glycogen, and some fitness professionals will know that phrase more likely. The problem we have is as we increase body adiposity, and this is really vital, and there's factors in genes, there's factors in other, but the biggest single factor seems to be as I increase body fatness levels, particularly intra-abdominal and visceral fat, that has a direct role on decreasing how sensitive my cells are to insulin. So when my glucose was going high,
Sorry. Visceral fat for people. What's visceral fat? I know it, but what's visceral fat?
So viscera is the bowel. So visceral fat is around the bowel, and it's another way for describing that fat that sits behind your abdominal wall. And I always think when you go on holiday as a child, I used to remember there were people with a jelly belly, so the belly would sort of wobble, and that fat is more than subcutaneous. It's sitting in front of their abdominals, and it gives that jingling effect. You know, you hit them with a football and it wobbles. And then there's the other person who we would describe as having a beer belly, where their tummy is firm and looks like a pregnancy belly. And that, in the same way as pregnancy, what's going on then is happening behind the abdominal wall. So the abs are on the outside of the fat. Now, there's a marked difference in health risk between those two things, with the reason being, and it ties into the diabetes piece, fat is an inflammatory tissue. So the great danger of fat is forgetting it has an active role in increasing this unwanted immune process called inflammation. So if I'm storing my fat intra-abdominally or in the viscera or visceral fat, those three phrases generally get thrown around together, then I have a much bigger impact on organ systems. Great example there would be foie gras. I don't know if you've ever, it's not big in India, foie gras, I would have thought. Foie gras is a French cuisine. It's morally reprehensible. Let me put this out there. And basically, the French, other nations do it, but the French force feed geese grain. It's one of those really interesting things about carbohydrate. They force feed geese grain and they fatten them enormously. But as the geese fatten, that fat then moves into a porous organ, which is the liver. So that the liver becomes fatty. So we get fatty liver of a goose, which then becomes this extraordinary delicacy, foie gras. One of the fastest growing health conditions in the UK is called non-alcoholic fatty liver, NAFLD.
I've heard of this.
Yep. And this is again another mechanism through which fat causes challenges to health. And here again, we're drifting back to why BMI isn't a good marker, right? Because I want to know not whether your weight is too much. I want to know how much of your weight is fat. And then conversely, how much of that fat is intra-abdominal or visceral? That's crucial.
Some people also say that this is fat surrounding your organs. So would it be on other organs also? Is it only the stomach?
It sits in that, so it's around all the organs, but only the liver is particularly porous.
Got it.
So it influences the pancreas, and it has a role in changing the relationship with insulin and glucagon. But its biggest impact is on the liver because the fat actually moves inside the liver. So your liver gets bigger and would start to look like a marbled steak. You know, in terms of when we're interested in the higher quality steaks. I hope if there's any vegans listening, I apologize. But your higher quality steaks are the Wagyus and the Kobes on the ribeye, and then you're down to sort of the fillet, which has got the least fat in it. So your liver goes from basically looking like a fillet to looking like a Wagyu. And that is where we start to then influence its ability to do its job. And that creates a whole range of detoxification, circulatory problems. So what we've got is, if I've got too much body fat, particularly intra-abdominally, then I can, going back to blood glucose, my cells stop listening to insulin. So I used to need to produce 1 unit of insulin to get my glucose down to normal. Now I need 1.5. Now I need 2. Now I need 2.5. And this led to people who were having the level of their glucose in their bloodstream rising and insulin rising. And this is the sort of the stage before you develop type 2 diabetes, which was often called insulin resistance. And so the drugs companies were like, well, we've got to make the cells more receptive to insulin. They're basically like a nagging parent. You nag, and no one's listening to you anymore. You need to sort of almost reset and go, start listening to me again. And the drug metformin, which sort of became the biggest version of that, was the precursor. And then they made the incretins, because the second mechanism of incretins is to increase your sensitivity of your cells to insulin. So that these naturally producing digestive hormones slow how quickly food moves through your digestive system, which makes you feel full. And when carbohydrate in your diet enters into your bloodstream as blood glucose, if that were to rise more aggressively than would be ideal, the drugs will then increase the sensitivity of your cells to the insulin, which makes it less likely that your glucose will spike or drop. So there are two mechanisms of these drugs. They're just literally replicating a natural biological process, with the third mechanism being they tell your brain that you're full. So they give a delayed gastric emptying, improved sensitivity to insulin, and a direct impact on the hypothalamus, suggesting a feeling of satiety. That's why the drugs are good. 2 bits there. The diabetes piece is deeply, deeply relevant to the fitness profession. Because, as you say, in India, that the incidence is astonishing. but it's a very late stage disease to reveal itself in the sense of you've got to have such high glucose for so long that you've started to notice a few key symptoms. And your mother might have noticed that she was more thirsty.
Yeah.
And she would then be, and the reason the body's thirsty is going, look, I cannot get this super high glucose out of my bloodstream through insulin. So I'm going to start peeing it out. So it begs you to drink fluids.
Yeah.
And then you start excreting glucose through your urine.
Yeah.
And then the urine starts to become sweet.
Yeah.
And I often reflect back on medieval times, Samir, when I'm having a bad day at work, because diabetes is called a disease of excess.
Yes.
And someone used to taste the piss of the king to check whether he had basically overindulged. And right back in the day, I always think if you're there listening to this now and you're having a bad day, you could have been the royal piss taster. And that's a difficult day at the office, particularly when you do finally taste glucose in the urine. You've got to deliver the worst news possible, which is no more haunches of venison tonight, my lord. So it's, the whole thing. It sort of sits around this idea of if I overconsume calories, let's forget the reasons why for that for the moment, and I lay down too much tissue, and too much of that tissue is fat, and too much is intra-abdominal, my body will start to reduce its metabolic effectiveness. That's why we call these things metabolic disease, because my metabolism, my ability to utilize or manufacture energy through the predominant fuel, which is glucose, becomes compromised. And at the heart of this is too much weight, too much fat, too much intra-abdominal fat. So that person, BMI 27, going back to them, I don't know why they're there. All I know is something that's definitely going to help them is better glucose management, better feeling of being full, and a better regulation of the feeling of appetite effectively. And therefore, why would I not want them on this drug? And that's my null hypothesis back to the fitness profession. Why would I not want them on this drug? Now, people can say, oh, we don't know what it's like in 40 years' time. This isn't like several drugs which are completely artificially manufactured. If I take a statin, which has been through, it's probably I still think the broadest prescribed drug in the world for managing cholesterol, it's inhibiting my liver to manufacture cholesterol. It's a sort of biological inhibitor. This is just putting something into my body that my body might not naturally make enough of. This is no different to someone injecting insulin. This is no different to someone, just doing a completely natural process and just saying, I didn't make enough incretin naturally, so I'll add some in. It doesn't give me a solution to the why. I get that. But why would I not want people walking around with better regulated appetite, better controlled glucose, and a better feeling of being full when they eat? I can't see any reason to that, on the assumption there's no nasty, sinister side effect down the line, which isn't my responsibility to safeguard anyway. Now, that's my position back to the fitness industry. Why would you not want that for your members? Now,
because I see it as at the moment I see it as competition. So what I see is that a lot of people, and we discussed this in the past as well, Ollie.
Yeah.
Human beings tend to take the path of least resistance.
Totally.
Now, if I am, and you remember I asked this question at Elevate, I asked people that how many of you have thought that you could take Ozempic or thought about it, and 70% of the hands went up. And all those people were fit, right? And the reason is because most people see it, you see somebody whose training is bollocks off, and he is not able to lose weight at the pace at which you could if you take these medication, this Ozempic and whatever these drugs are.
Agreed.
And the first thought come to you is, why don't I do a kind of a hybrid model where I'll take this for some time, it'll help me, and I'll keep training. So it becomes like a cheat code that people have got. And I've seen people do this. I remember reading about this on, obviously before I interviewed you, I said I'll do some research. I can't fucking sit in front of you without any research.
You can.
So I read this, and it said that there were these cases where people have been to an apartment. So a guy goes to Airbnb and he says that people from the French Fashion Week or the Paris Fashion Show were there, and they left the needles there, and they realized that people are misusing this. Now, if you make this drug easily accessible, which it is now, right? Then you will always have people who will misuse it. So I don't for once believe that this drug should not be used. Not for once. But just believe that it is not, we're picking this up in penny packets, not as a whole system. So the problem is nobody's addressing who needs to get in the minds of people. This is a drug that you can take, and it'll curb. All people know is it'll curb my hunger. It'll help me lose fat. I don't have to work as hard. as what I'm doing, but doesn't solve the other problem where we speak about people need to have good muscle mass. So there are two different problems you're trying to solve.
Agree.
And again, you're a very strong, I think you're an ambassador of the fitness industry in one way, where you also speak about why you need to have good skeletal mass, because after the age of 60, if you have a fall, chances are you will never recover from it because you don't have that skeletal mass. So that needs to be done. Now the thing is, people are looking at this problem in isolation.
Agreed.
We're trying to solve one problem, but that will create a bigger problem for us.
Agreed.
Imagine if 15% of the UK goes to the gym, 5% say fuck off, man, I'm not going to go to the gym.
Yep.
I'm just going to take medication.
Agreed.
How do I sort this problem for me?
And there's two parts to that. The first part is I'm not that bothered about that population who misuse, because there's more people who need this than people who are going to misuse it. That's but and again, I say that again, Samir, because most people in gyms haven't met this group.
Yes.
And they aren't coming. In the 15% we've got, we're not seeing the clinically obese, the morbidly obese. They don't come because they don't feel welcome. I've done research groups.
So would it be do you think, Ollie, this could be a step one, that people who are, I would not want, honestly, I would not want somebody who's clinically obese to come to the gym and run, walk on the treadmill, or do anything for that matter. It's not good for them.
And I think there's parts to that again. I think it's a critical intervention for that group. How we play a role in that becomes a sort of part two. But the great danger is, again, the fitness profession goes, I've seen someone with a body mass index of 19 taking this drug to get to 18.5.
Correct.
And it's mismanaged. Again, we're not the pharmacists, we're not the dispensers. The people who need this drug are those who probably aren't accessing it either, who are in body mass indexes of 37.5, 2 comorbidities, blood pressure and glucose control, don't quite meet a government guideline in their area and desperately need it. And again, there's not a supply issue at the moment with the 18.5 BMIs are nicking it from that group. There's a cost issue, and that's the big issue.
Correct.
How do we get a costing model? That's a bigger piece. So let's not use the.
So what pricing is this being sold at, you think?
It's generally, I think it's somewhere between 150 and 300 pounds a month. There's been a big change in Mounjaro because it's an American pharmaceutical company, so it's fallen under the scrutiny of Trump's tariffs. So we've seen a lot of people on probably the most effective version of this drug who've suddenly been priced out of it. So that creates a huge challenge. There's an NHS provision, but the provision for NHS is a much higher clinical eligibility. So you need to have a significantly higher BMI and 2 health risks. And then it'll be down to the availability of that within the particular trust that you fall within.
And what about online pharmacies? I also understand that you can fill up an online questionnaire which says that, which tells the online pharmacist that you are obese and you can get it. Is that also possible?
Not quite. So they require some form of validation of your weight, which will be generally a video call or a photo. There's a way you can hack it. No system is imputed. But principally,
you don't make this for people who want to hack this, could you?
No, but every pharmaceutical company is pivoting into this. I've worked with bariatric companies who went from doing X number of operations a month to 2% of that. No one's going for a stomach stapling, no one's going for a gastric band, because we now have a pharmacological low impact alternative. So those companies are pivoting to becoming dispensers because they have to. And what I think is interesting to the world of bariatrics and bariatric surgeons is you've almost got them now giving lifestyle advice and prescribing this drug, whereas you're a highly trained surgeon, because that has taken an industry that didn't have the chance to pivot overnight. That sector has been decimated. And I look at the fitness sector again, if we're selling a weight loss solution, we will lose. Now, you've raised 2 critical points there. First thing is, let's not start with the misuse criteria, because it clouds the judgment. Let's start with most people. We've got 65% or so of the UK that's overweight. Most of those people are not going to be, again, there through high muscle mass, etc. We've got an obesity challenge that is probably the main reason if my kids went to an A&E on a Saturday night, that local NHS hospital is stretched because of the burden of obesity into cardiovascular disease, diabetes, secondary health implications, amputations, blindness. You take away the burden of cost of obesity to society, and you release funds to A&E, to cancer treatments, to at-home rehabilitation. So let's not get lost in Paris models taking drugs in hotel rooms. And I do want to come back to that.
Yeah. What do you think is the percentage impact that NHS would have if you're able to sort this out? Ballpark number.
I couldn't. I just know, we're looking at let's take a simple number, sleep apnea, right? Sleep apnea, 10 million potentially undiagnosed people with this condition where they're occluding their breath. That's leading to significant daytime drowsiness, productivity. Take what percentage of the 10 million people are having sleep apnea because they are overweight, and that weight is compressing their airways during the night. What does that look like from a blood pressure point of view? What does that look like from a stroke point of view? I genuinely think if you took away, the obesity burden, if you click your fingers and overnight it went, I don't know what we would do with the money. I don't know what we'd do with the money. You'd be able to have a 40-minute
my
GP
sort code
consultation.
and bank account details.
You'd be cooking. You'd be cooking. And we could have then time. Because obviously what that really buys you is time. And one of the things that is challenged about a healthcare system is not bad people, they're great people.
Yeah.
It's not a broken system, it's just an overwhelmed system. So let's take that piece. The relevant piece here is, and you've hit the nail on the head, losing weight doesn't make you healthier.
Yeah.
Right. That's a vital component.
Yeah.
Losing the right weight makes you healthier. And in this premise, so what we've got is we haven't got a competitor. We've got the greatest single opportunity in both of our lifetimes to incentivize people to do resistance training.
Correct.
For the first time ever.
Yeah.
Right. And if I see someone who's getting bariatric surgery, I'd never had a stat on what weight was going to be lost and how much was muscle, how much was fat. We know statistically that losing weight on these incretin hormones, so medicated weight loss, has a greater percentage of muscle mass lost than if I lost weight on traditional methods alone. And we're seeing about 40%, and these figures are changing all the time, but 40% of your weight being lost is from muscle mass. Wow. And so if I lose you 10 kilograms, that's 4 kilograms of muscle mass. That's 4 kilograms of tissue that strengthened your bones. That's 4 kilograms of tissue that harbored and held muscle glycogen. That's 4 kilograms of tissue that enabled the production and utilization of androgen hormones.
There's 4 kilograms of muscle that I fucking slaughtered my ass off to build.
How hard, everyone listening to this, to build a kilogram of muscle. 4 kilograms, right? So here we have Brian, who goes on his GLP-1 journey from January, goes from 110 kilograms to 100 kilograms. But again, aggressively, it's the rate of loss is so rapid. But he loses, let's imagine that's an average. Let's imagine he loses 6 kilograms of muscle mass. Is he healthier with 6 kilograms less muscle mass at 10 kilograms lighter?
100%.
Well, I don't know if he is.
No, I think if you lost,
he's still 6 kilograms less lean tissue.
Yeah, but he's got 10.
He's got 4 kilograms less fat.
Yeah.
I would say, if I looked at him, I would say his markers will be equivocal, if not worse.
Is it?
Because that muscle mass is a huge part of every parameter I'd possibly measure. So his VO2 max would have dropped down.
Yeah, 100%.
His strength will have dropped. His performance will drop. And here we have the thing, because we don't measure body composition, we think weight loss is universally healthy. I've seen people lose all of their weight through lean tissue, all of it. Wow. And therefore, they are becoming skinnier and fatter. And we had this phrase skinny fat, which was popularized, which was generally females with a body mass index down of 18.5, 19, but body fat, so the percentage of their weight that was body fat might have been 33, 35%, and ideally we'd have that closer to 28%. And in those individuals, we saw joint instability because they don't have the muscle to stabilize. Your knee is only, defined by the ligatures and the muscle mass. It's not defined by a structural joint. We saw increased propensity to osteopenia, the thinning of the bones leading to osteoporosis. We saw challenging management of hormonal health, be that right down one end of the spectrum with amenorrhea up to other challenges around fertility and menstrual cycle. So we can't distinguish, we have to distinguish fat loss from weight loss. And if we don't, we can't find an argument why we sit alongside these particular medications. So if I put you on let's imagine you are, again, clinically, you meet the criteria, and you commence these drugs, several things aren't going to happen. You're not incentivized to change the behavior that got you there in the first place. So that's erroneous, which means you're beholden to this drug for your lifetime.
Correct.
There's no behavioral change component.
Yeah.
Secondly, you went, Samir, from eating 3,500 calories a day at your weight of 110 kilograms to now I've basically halved it. You're eating 1,750 a day. But in those 3,500 calories, you did manage to get just about enough vitamin C, just enough vitamin D, just enough folic acid, because some of your foods were fortified and you bought, Kellogg cereals and they had the vitamins in there. Now I'm halving that.
Yeah.
So I'm halving your nourishment as well as halving your calories. So suddenly I'm deficient in key micronutrients that I need to just be a normal human being. And now I'm wasting your muscle mass. So over time, I've made no behavior change to any of the things that got you there, which could be fundamentally unhealthy behaviors. I've got no increase in your nourishment or nutrient abundance. And I've got no, again, stabilization of this aggressive loss of muscle mass. So I am less healthy for the introduction of this drug over time. Now, whose job is that? No one's job. Right? This is the blind spot.
Correct.
The GP who prescribed it said you were eligible. The pharmacist managing it is checking your side effects and going, did you get nausea, gastrointestinal discomfort? You know, their role and their remit is to see your tolerance to the drug and titrate the dose up or down against your weight loss. Your weight loss, not your muscle mass loss. You being more collectively enabled by behavior, you having retention of muscle mass, you increasing your nourishment is singularly your job. And no one has incentivized you, no one has coached you. And the group of people who need this most are the group who've engaged in that least. So what's our job? We have to then turn up alongside this drug.
So who's this our job? When you say our job, and this is exactly what I was coming to.
Yeah.
There's nobody sorting the problems of the ecosystem.
Agree.
Penny packets. You can't have solutions in penny packets.
Exactly
you can't
right.
do. So you say that's not my fucking job, is it?
Yeah.
So if I'm a personal trainer,
Yes.
I think this is going to take away people from the gym.
Yes.
And like you rightly said, those people are not even coming to the gym.
Agreed.
They would come to the gym if they reach a particular state where they can come to the gym.
Agreed.
Which
This is
is
a
where
new
we-
audience. This
Yes,
is a
it's a
new
complete-
opportunity to
Right.
get a new audience that's never been in before.
Right. So what should we, and when I say we now, let's say I represent the fitness industry,
Yep.
right, in some shape or form.
I think you do.
and say I come and say we look at the skills of our personal trainers at the moment.
Yep.
You do a lot of work with personal trainers to help them get themselves to the next level.
Agreed.
You run a company which also does certifications for trainers to understand what's well-being, what's important, how to look at all this holistically.
Yep.
But our current personal training programs that we have, which is level 2, level 3,
Yes.
or whatever, don't cover any of this.
No.
Right. What should we be doing now from just upskilling the industry to understand that there's going to be new kind of clients
Agreed.
who are ready to join this industry
Yep.
2 to 5 years from now, maybe earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe sooner than that.
Agreed.
And how do I handle them? Because they have just lost 10 kgs, 6 kgs of those were muscle mass.
Yep.
They are late 40s, 50s. They're prone to falling. They're prone to, in their 60s, they're prone to a lot of issues in their life because of the lifestyle they've had.
Agreed.
How do I tackle this?
That question, I work with everyone active. I'll shout them out here. And we said, how do we address that question? And the first thing is you have to culturally align on your understanding of obesity. What you cannot do is have people coming in and they're getting the crossed-armed approach, which is this is a shortcut, this is lazy. So your first thing is, if you don't understand obesity because you've never walked in those shoes, now you must understand obesity. And I would flip by, I was interviewed in Health Club Manager probably 2 years ago when the GLP was one, we're becoming more mainstream. And I said, whatever we do not create false boundaries and qualifications to get into this, because we will just create a subspec. Every single person in your club, from your front receptionist to your personal trainer, must have a basic understanding of this. And it isn't that complicated. Right? Let's not overcomplicate this, because these people do not need a barrier to entry that they need to see a specialist resource. They need to see, a special, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro qualified level 9. It doesn't matter. What we need is a basic understanding. This is an ally, but these individuals need to resistance train. They need kindness and empathy, that they're not lazy, they're not overeating, they're not just doing pizzas on the weekend and sitting on their ass. They are a complex series of genetic, environmental, and behavioral pieces that we cannot try and solve off the bat. And then we need to recognize, how do we talk to them in a language they understand, and also have the basic understanding of these drugs that means I don't look like an idiot when I'm working with them. So what we did with Everyone Active, we sort of did a cultural training on obesity and empathy towards it, what a complicated and challenging disease it is. We did a big piece on language. So we're going to refer to people as someone living with obesity, not an obese person. Someone living with excessive body weight, not someone who's overweight. So we're not going to define you by your condition. You are someone, we years ago, again, if your mother had been diagnosed back in the 90s, she'd have been called a diabetic. Now she's someone who's living with diabetes because she isn't a diabetic. She has this condition, and it's a part of her. As someone living with obesity is a part of their condition, they are not obese. So language, empathy, Then it's about technical understanding. What is the basics about the drugs, so I can sign them, post them back to the person who's responsible for side effects, which isn't me. It's the prescribing practitioner. And then how do I create a safe space in my environment that this individual can do resistance training, adapted to their significant likely difference in size compared to my normal clients. And then you can say, come on in, we're going to do our best. But what we don't want to do, no one's going to get this perfect. You know, we can't take level 2, level 3 PTs and turn them into pharmacologists, and we can't turn them into, you know, high-end behavioral scientists. We can just show them that their language and their kindness and their consideration can go up a notch. And then we open the doors and we make this the frictionless entry in the history of our clubs. Because the minute we start creating friction, a group who've never wanted to walk through our doors are certainly not going to come. And they don't need it, right? So here's the point. You're losing weight hand over fist. You're like, why would I join a gym? So we've got to lead the charge. It goes, oh no, losing weight isn't healthy, losing fat is. Oh, visceral fat's more damaging than and that's a messaging play.
So who's doing this now at the moment?
No one. And it's an aching gap. So the pharmacists have said, look, fundamentally, we get it. So they've started abridging digital nutritional products to their thing. You know, that they are starting to look at you know, potential remote access to digital fitness apps, for example. And it's a bit like saying, look, Samir, to make me feel happier, I'm going to give you access to an app that I know you'll never use, and access to a personal training resource that I know you'll never use. But I did it, right? You know, they're not incentivized for you to do those things. Their commercial entity, and they'll you know, put the knives out for me, is that you stay on the drug, because that's how they commercialize. That's their business. They're not a healthcare professional. They are a prescribing pharmacy whose remunerative model is recurring use of their product. That's
and rightly so. That's
not their job. Their job is
exactly.
to judiciously prescribe and manage the side effects of that drug. They're not a health ecosystem. You came to the point earlier, said, you know, whose job is it? The point is, it's no one's job. It's never been anybody's job for you to be healthy.
And that's the fucking problem.
That's the that's the t-shirt slogan. That's the fucking problem.
Yeah.
Right. And therefore, everyone pops up managing their own piece of the pie. Why I talk about we is you and I think, have a shared belief. We can be the only true advocate. The only, because we have a place. We have a place. We have a space. We have a community. We have a tribe who can be the hub of your health and well-being journey. And every step I take into health and well-being, it comes back to the same thing. It's the collective behaviors you adhere to over time, and who owns behavior. It's the individual, and we should be their ally. We are the advocate of behavior, the coach, the strategist. I don't care what we are. But if we own behavior, we own health. And no one else will own health. That's a really critical point to distinguish. So we can't look at the system and go, anyone in this system is immoral or broken. It is what it is. There's an extremely effective product with an extremely high demand. But neither of those things will manifest as good health outcomes unless we step in. What do I expect in 10 years if we don't do this? Rise of osteoporosis, because rise of fractures. Still, the biggest cost to healthcare system is the cost of falls and fractures, which is monstrous. So those fragile bones with low musculature are going to topple over and break. What do we expect to see? Diseases of malnourishment. I was at a talk recently with one of the lead data scientists from Zoe, and we're seeing scurvy back on the menu, rickets, because people aren't consuming nutrients. We're not seeing any
crazy,
reason.
isn't it? Man, we've progressed so much, and we're just going back.
Because no one takes a step back. All the walking forwards is great, and I love the tech, and I love the science, and I love gene editing, and I love stem cells, and I love wearables. No one takes a step back and goes, what are the fundamental components my body needs?
Exactly that, the basics.
I'm stealing a living, Samir, because all I do is owe people, say I can use the most advanced technology in the world to prove to you that you need the basics. And I can prove to you the dosage of the basics. And I can remind you of the breadth of the basics. But my physiology, my body, my physiology hasn't evolved for tens of thousands of years. So why would the basics not be applicable? I can find ways of slightly augmenting them, accelerating the basics, or capturing and hyper-personalizing the basics. But the basics are the basics for a reason, because they work. And every time we do something that takes us away from them, it will loop back as a whole series of secondary problems in the short to medium term. I think people know that, and they're starting to put lip service to that with these digital addition products.
Yeah, so that's where the challenge comes in, because it's just lip service.
Yep.
No, I don't think people have bought into it enough to actually change the way they operate. While we all are talking about well-being, we're all talking about what's happening in the world today, we're all talking about taking an approach which is different from what existed in the past. but I don't think we're doing enough as an industry. So if I look at the fitness industry and I say, are gyms doing anything different that they were doing in the last 5 or 10 years? Honestly, no. I'll tell you what they're doing well. They're talking the talk. That's all.
Agreed.
There's nobody who's actually, I won't say nobody, very, very few. If you were to draw a bell curve, maybe 5% of the entire gyms are actually realize the importance of well-being. They just think it's, and we spoke about this on the last podcast. Well-being is like incense sticks and fucking having red light therapy. That's where it ends. And give somebody, people are doing alkaline water, all sorts of fads. And you say you just, anything that you don't understand as pure fitness, you say is well-being.
Yes.
And that's incorrect. So let's say we look at our fitness industry today, and you had an opportunity of helping us evolve the industry and say, okay, the building blocks, and let's go back about 15, 20 years where we started saying that personal trainers need to be trained really well. There are some countries which are still struggling with that in terms of getting the right. So in the UK, we've got SimSpa, which is doing a great job. In India, we've got now Reps India, which is doing a good job of standardizing the education, right? But I think there is a difference between standards and standardization.
Agreed.
I think we need to first change the standards. So if you look at a PT, a level 2 or level 3, level 4, whatever you call it, you look at a personal trainer today, I don't think he's equipped enough to talk to the client which is going to walk through the gym once he's taken this medication and is at a stage. From an education and bridging perspective, what action points do you recommend we should take as an industry?
Yeah, I think, again, there's two parts to that. There's one is what is the professional capability of the teams. The second is what is the commercial operating model of the operator. And I think,
commercial.
Because the commercial operating model is everyone's nervous to commit to well-being because if I open a 10,000 square foot gym in a demographic of AB households, I can fill it with, my 1,000 members paying £79 a month because I know that model will work.
Correct.
Right? So, and again, there'll be operators listening to it going, Ollie clearly is not an operator. I'm not. My job is not.
But I'm an operator. I can tell you, I've been an operator and I can tell you what you're saying is 100% the truth.
So you would know cookie cutter what I can. And so you can guarantee some kind of commercial return on that entity.
Correct.
Now you got to go, well, is commercial return enough? I want to make an impact in the community of that. So now I need to reduce my members because I need to increase the diversity of facility. So I need to add in some other things. I might be adding in a bit more hot and cold contrast. I might be adding in a recovery area. I might be adding in some kind of education space. Every single thing you add in comes at an opportunity cost to something that's leaving. And now I need a new commercial modeling because I'm now down to 800 members. So it needs to be £110 a month. And that audience now needs to be really well-being literate. Now, do they exist? Right? Because suddenly I've built my place. I've created this construct. The cost was I knew what the operating model would be that would be effective. Now I've got an unknown. I've got no definitive marketing strategy. I don't know what the audience is going to be. Is this 50 to 60 year olds? Is this perimenopausal women in their 30s and late 30s into 50? I've got an unknown because well-being doesn't mean anything. And I say that with absolutely clarity. Why longevity is doing so well in well-being is it means something. Correct. It means you and I either living longer, but more importantly, living well for longer. Yeah. And so it's a stamp. I can explain it in a sentence. Well-being doesn't mean anything. Like your version of well-being will be different to mine. So how do I market to 800 people in a local geography that I don't live in? So I know, do you know what? That feels like a big hassle. Plus, my lead-in time for my staff is I now need someone who's reps level 4, equivalent or level 4 PT. I need to invest now 2 months of training into them versus 4 weeks. I need then to make sure that they're not churning in an 8-month window because I can't deal with that recruitment and training cost. I've got more moving parts than I can simply handle, and all because I wanted to do good. Because the commerciality of that center is it will wash the same revenue at the 800 members as the 1,000 of normal gym. So I've got to be driven by a passion that I want to change the health of those 800 people at the potential risk of it not working at all. So what people do is they go, well, all those unknowns are playing into it. What I'll do is I'll do fitness plus. And I'll go, what I'll try and do is squeeze well-being products into a bricks and mortar fitness operation, and I'll sell them kombucha. Or I'll do a lunchtime talk on sleep. But I don't change the culture. I don't change the acquisition. I don't change the delivery. And of course, that means, it's not going to move the dial because it isn't cultural. It isn't in the DNA of the business. You're not a well-being business. You're a fitness business that does a bit of wellness, and it doesn't really define what that means. These are the challenges. And what we've got at the moment is a really tricky consumer who loves products, who loves to buy things. We're seeing one of the fastest growing companies in the UK is Health, which is a product marketplace like an Amazon for curated well-being products, because people love products. It's the growth of the whatever we're at in the global wellness economy. It's 70% product still. People want to buy these services, these behaviors. We're not seeing the same acquisition of spend in that area. And no one, as far as I'm aware, Samir, has got the cookie cutter version of a well-being center up and running. So you've got local forces, you've got unknown consumer demands, you're fighting against products who are telling audiences that consumers that this will do the same thing for less effort. And that if I'm on limited resource and I'm opening a club, that's too many what ifs probably. Then at the heart of that is the staff member who is saying, well, I personally believe that I want to be this well-being professional, but how on earth can they do that outside of a culture that is built around it? So there's no point having this jewel of a practitioner if you're selling hourly personal training in an equipment showroom.
Correct.
So which one do we change first? And to me, still, the lack of central definition of what we mean by well-being, what role we want to play in it, is missing. Now, I would shout out again, everyone active here again. We sat down a year and a bit ago and said, what role do we want to play in well-being? Taking the footprint that we have, the staffing that we have, and said, what behaviors can we influence that we feel are an extension of our scope of practice? And it's a useful model for people to go through. How do we define well-being? What are our consumer group? And what are the services that we think will be an extension of our core proposition, whilst understanding the capability of our existing workforce? So the workforce can be upskilled to a degree. The offering can be diversified and extended. And to me, it's been a very healthy way to not start selling products out of a cabinet on front desk before you as an organization have decided what well-being means to you. And I think every organization would need to do that before it worked out which supplement it sold, or which wearable it promoted, or which sleep product it decided to throw into its front of house. It's got to be a very clear philosophical approach, not a start with a commercial approach.
Yeah, I think the one thing I Steve Jobs used to always say, the customers don't know what they want.
Agreed.
And as long as you can communicate it well.
Yes.
But before you start communicating to others, you need to know what the fuck you stand for.
Agreed.
I think that's the problem. What we are trying to do is, nobody wants to miss this well-being bus.
No.
I want to be fucking on it. It's some way or the other. Get me on it, because I don't want to lose, right? There are some people who are genuinely trying to do things. I remember, so I'd interviewed the guys from this gym called the Warehouse Gym, Chris Ware, in Swansea.
Yeah.
And they've been wanting to do this, and they say, we really want to impact the community. We want to do something. They've now started, a complete recovery space within their facility, because they realize the importance of that. Now, if you would have asked them 5 years back about recovery, they didn't know the importance of recovery. At least they as trainers knew, but they knew that the people didn't know. And I remember having this conversation with them that, customers don't know what they want till the time they've been given that product.
Yes.
And now it's just flying off. It's flying off the shelf. That service is always overbooked.
I bet.
And the reason is because people are reading. The good part about for us today is accessibility to information.
Agreed.
Right? We didn't have 15 years back, 10 years back, access to internet you didn't have so much information. You didn't have YouTube videos of people. You didn't have podcasts like this where you could listen and understand what it means. Like what you've told me, I think anybody who wants to understand what this drug is,
yes,
and as a user, as a fitness professional, as a well-being professional, can understand what it means. And it's not all bad. Because I for one was not convinced at all that this should be introduced to and I'll be honest with you, and that's the reason I wanted to have a longer chat with you on that stage, at Elevate, because I was not convinced, and personally I feel that, you don't want to start a new problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, agreed.
But I didn't know the, what's happening in the background. Yeah. All I knew was these anecdotal things coming out from the market that, like I said, models are using this, somebody else is using it. But you're right. At the end of the day, you'll always have misuse for something what is existing.
Totally.
Be it paracetamol or cough syrup.
Yeah.
If people want to abuse it, they'll fucking abuse it. You can't help it.
Agree.
But that's going to be, again, you draw a bell curve. It's going to be very, very limited number of people.
Yeah.
As long as we can regulate it well, it does the job, what it's supposed to do.
Agree.
But
also on that, just, if we don't do it, who's going to do it, right? And it's like the fitness industry is sort of going, like I say, it doesn't care if we anoint it or not. It's going to run through the consumer relentlessly. It's going to get turned into, there's the oral version, there'll be hopefully potentially live by the end of the year. I wouldn't put it past this being in protein drinks and in the tap water in the next 4 or 5 years. It's that interesting. We've got the longevity community microdosing it because glucose control is so integral to brain health and future health. It isn't going to die down. It's going to dial up. So it doesn't need us to anoint it. It's going to go. We have the opportunity to make it effective or not. And so that's where it's like, we are the one that determines whether it works or not. I think it's a total scandal that you get prescribed it without being given a gym membership thrown in because of the clear pathway to muscle loss. So, I hope you're seeing, some of that perspective, and I'm open to data changing and perspective change as well. Samir, I'm never one to turn an opinion as the facts and reveal themselves. But I think to start off frosty to it doesn't make any sense to me when I look at what is going on, regardless of our enthusiasm or not, and the requirement for us, a genuine requirement. And I think, coming back to the operating model of adding recovery, it's crucial. There is a consumer demand for recovery now. Sauna has been popularized, cold has been popularized. And so adding that in as an adjunct to a fitness facility does give you, I think, the easiest toe in the water.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a true well-being provider, I always ask this question and challenge, are you prepared to be 5% less profitable to be 5% more effective?
But that's only in the short term. Ollie, I personally believe if I was a commercial player and if I had a long-term vision, 5 years from now, I would be better off than the guys who not offered this because I would have the fucking advantage, the edge over those guys.
Okay.
I would have had the learning curve. I would understand the product exactly because guess what? Nobody else understands it.
Agree.
Right? We don't know how customers will react to this. We don't know how it'll pan out. But I know for a fact you're better off being on the well-being bandwagon than not being on it. And then when you're on it, you be the right way. You don't shortchange your members, don't shortchange your trainers because if you teach them well enough, if you tell them, like you said, a lot of trainers look at it and said, hold on a minute, I'm fucking paying 400 quid as rent here and you're going to promote this,
Yeah.
I'm going to get screwed, and they're right in thinking so. But if I can educate them, so, one of the things you guys have been doing a fantastic job at Everyone Active.
Yeah.
Can you run me through how you came up with this idea of doing what you're doing right now? So let's go back to when you thought of this and finally when you implemented it and what were the challenges you faced and where are you at today?
Yeah, it was a brilliant conversation. And I truly love the organization because it asked the question, what should we mean by well-being? And that was a board level discussion. Not all the intros were through Steph Heath, who's the sort of head of education, etc. is brilliant. And she was very keen to bring a well-being infusion. But it was when we got to board level and we said, what can we do to fulfill one of the values, which is increase the well-being of our communities? And that's such a lovely value to have. But then what are you doing to do that? And I think where you go to meeting an organization where they're at is there's no point downloading an external definition of well-being. It's saying, look, these are the sites we run. These are the people we look after. This is what we're delivering. How do we extend that to improve the well-being of communities? And the play there was, before we commoditize well-being, let's create a standardized philosophical understanding of what it is. Okay. So again, good health versus well-being. And we ran a company-wide education on what we mean by well-being, and then created something called the U Plus membership, which was going to be a premiumized membership, which basically said, look, what we will do is create the opportunity to influence those who want to pay more on the behaviors they adhere to outside of our facility. So when you're in the facility, be that an hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, of course, we can't really change your physiology markedly, but we can really influence it if you give me 15 minutes at home and 20 minutes at work. So we created 6, again, domains of influence, or 6 pillars effectively, of which movement was one. We chose sleep, we chose social well-being, we chose brain, which looks at brain health and psychological well-being, we chose nutrition, and then we added recovery. And for us, recovery was about the biological return of energy. So we decided, the most important thing for well-being was the behaviors you adhere to. We created a behavioral assessment. We then digitalized that and rolled it out again across the group, but everyone was trained in it. We didn't train one person in a club to work out what well-being meant. We trained every single person in the organization, what we mean by health, what we mean by well-being, what the logic to these 6 domains are. Then they created a premiumized membership, which gave a vehicle for that to have, again, a consultation, additional aspects like access to GP services, physiotherapy services. But fundamentally, this was about, we want to be your partner in your lifestyle, not we want to be a place you come and exercise. And they didn't, there is a membership for that. But if you want a trusted partner whose only interest is you being more well, that was what the U Plus was designed. Now, because we did that, we can then launch products like medicated weight loss because it makes sense once you build it on top of that foundation. But if you go into an organization that hasn't defined well-being and you start doing a medicated weight loss program or a longevity program, it's confusing to your staff and your consumer.
100%.
What are you? And I think what Everyone Active has done is taken the time to lay the foundations of what it means by well-being, what's in the DNA of the organization. It created a clear commercial vehicle that exchanged value of time for value of cash. And that proves that there's a demand for it. But most importantly, it's a springboard that you can now deliver whatever you want because it all makes sense. And the minute you take something because it's trending, or you do get a gut microbe because it's in the news, or you do a wearable because it's sexy, but it doesn't tie back to a central philosophy, I think you're on a short-termism view of how we commoditize well-being. So I think I'm very proud of the work we've done sort of collaboratively. There's been a lot of people involved, and so far so good.
Thank you, Ollie, for sharing all your thoughts. And I think very importantly, what Everyone Active has done in the UK, that can be replicated by people across the world. And I'm very, very happy that, their leadership shares this with the world openly and say, you know what, this is the model we have created. Happy if you can, learn something from it and implement in your own organization.
Totally is. The rising tide lifts all ships. This is when you look at lifestyle, you can talk to 75 million people in the UK. You can talk to the billions of people across India. You can talk to everybody. Yeah. When you're only governed by the facility that's within your local geography, you have a different proposition. So I think it's a lovely program that we're seeing doing some real good.
Super stuff. Thanks, Ollie. Appreciate your time today.
So good to be with you, my friend. Thank you.
Same here. Bye-bye.